There's no significance to our lives in the belief of Jesus Christ, in the belief of God. That is no significance to us, belief or faith. So belief and faith does not determine, whether we're going to live or die. Plain and simple. You can believe in a book, you can believe in words, you can believe in whatever God that you want. Those beliefs, those religions, those faiths does not directly, affect our lives here. It has no real significance to us being alive on this planet. Now, the sun does. The existence of the sun does. The sun, in fact, as we know, is the reason why we can exist, the reason why life begins on this planet, the reason how life is created on this planet. We have to understand the true significance of the sun and the role that it plays on this planet and throughout, our solar system. It is very amazing when you begin to understand it. So we can go and look at it, on a plant life level. We understand photosynthesis. We understand how plants absorb the energy from the sun, and how, the chlorophyll in its leaves converts that energy into food for the plant, basically sugar. So you have basically chlorophyll A and chlorophyll B. They absorb photons and basically transfer that energy to the photosynthetic reaction center at basically a wavelength of 500 to 600 nanometers. So we know that it's basically on the color spectrum of green. So that's how we get, green plants. We can get into a whole thing with Osiris and the sun and all that, but we're going to do that in this video. But we understand that, without photosynthesis, without this process, we won't have healthy plants. We won't have food. We won't have vegetation or what have you. So this process is significant, and it deals with the sun. So when you have this process, you have the chlorophyll molecules, they become excited and they basically eject electrons. I talked about this in the human energy video on YouTube. So when you have an ejection of electrons, you have the surface is going to become, or the chlorophyll will basically become positively charged. So in order for it to now absorb photons again, it has to basically go back to normal. So it's going to need electrons to do that. So this is why you water plants, because that's where it's going to get its electrons from. So when you water plants, you basically have the H and the O separate. The hydrogen and the oxygen atoms separate. Now you have the oxygen atoms, when they come together, two oxygen atoms come together, they're going to basically give us, a oxygen molecule, and the plant will basically hold that and release it when it wants to. This is how we get our oxygen or what have you. But again, this process, it's the sun. It's life itself. We know that if this does not happen, we're not going to get our plants, our vegetables, our animals will not eat. They won't have, the food. So, it's a chain reaction of events beginning with the sun. So when the plants get its sun, we get our vegetables, the animals get its food, we get our food, so on and so forth. This is a powerful, thing that happens in nature, and it's normal, and it's significant to the life of everything on this planet, and we need it. You don't need a book. You don't need a belief or faith. This is not going to get you what you need to have existence on this planet. And this is what we have to think about. So when you go biblically into the book and you look at everything the book's talking about, it's not really giving you it's giving it to you, but in secret, as we know. It's not really giving you the true significance of the sun itself on human life, something that you cannot ignore. But when you understand the metaphor, we understand what it's talking about, which is Jesus. Now we understand the cycles that our sun takes place in. I mean, everything takes care of itself. We call it nature. It's intelligence to the whole thing when you understand. So even when we look at the watering of plants, we understand with the sun, you have the rain cycle with the sun making it so hot. You have water vapor, and the vapor creates condensation, which creates rain clouds eventually, and we get rain, which that rain will, of course, give the plants the electrons that they lose from the chlorophyll or what have you, having their explosion of electrons. They get their electrons back, and then you have the process, so on and so forth, of the plants having a sustained life because of water, us having a sustained life because of water, animals, or what have you, and it's a cycle that works. It's just an intelligence to the whole thing that you really have to understand. And it's amazing because it's all because of the sun. This is something that is important to understand when you begin to look at the reason why the ancients really revere the sun and why we see so much so-called sun worship in the ancient world, because this was huge. The crazy thing is they understood this. They understood all of this, even on a molecular level. How, of course, we do not know. But it's amazing that they knew it and that they wrote about it and, talked about it, and they understood the process and many other processes that the sun takes place in. So now we also understand about us as humans. We absorb the sun. We create vitamin D because of the sun. Vitamin D is needed for calcium. It helps develop strong bones. So the more exposure you have to the sun, the more vitamin D is created. This is why you see a lot of people with suntan, because if you let the sun be absorbed through your back, you get more creation of vitamin D because of that. So now, people, here's the big question you have to ask yourself. We look at the process and we understand, one, you have the sun that's given life to the plants. Because the plants have this life because of the sun, animals are able to basically eat, survive, live, or what have you. We know we get our energy from our food. We know we eat these plants. We have the same process to where we get energy from this food. If we don't eat, we will die. We will literally starve to death. If we don't drink, we will die. We will literally basically die of dehydration. This is something you got to look at. What's keeping us alive? The sun, right? So now, the question is, if we are infinite beings, if we have a soul, an immortal soul with infinite energy, why is it that we cannot simply sustain ourselves with our own energy? Think about that. We need the sun. If we don't eat and absorb that sun's energy, we can't sustain this human form and we'll die. But we have this infinite energy that we know exists inside of us that we call a soul, that has unlimited energy that we should be able to tap into and heal ourselves with our own energy. Why is that not possible? Now, I've got this question before from a lot of smart people who figured it out. And, basically I hint on it in a few videos if you really understand what I'm saying. But what you got to understand, and to answer the questions, you have to understand that it's because we have to rely on the sun because of our symbiotic relationship to the material. We are indeed spiritual beings, but we have a symbiotic relationship with the material world. Plain and simple. We need each other to exist. So just like we can't exist without this energy from the sun, our human bodies can't exist without us. So you have that one, the material us needs the spiritual us in order to exist, and we need what? The material in order to exist here. So if we want to exist in the physical world as spiritual beings, we need physical flesh. In order to sustain physical flesh, it needs energy to be animated. So if we want this body to be animated, we need this energy. Now, you also have to understand that, when you are eating and converting this energy into more energy, it's almost like the recharging of the energy that you have. You're recharging it because we don't have that direct contact to the sun, or at least we forget how to directly charge this energy. So we have almost like a, portable battery, basically within us, to where we can charge it for a certain amount of time and basically have energy, that we need. So if you have the right energy within you, then you can go ahead and use that energy to go ahead and keep you energized. So this goes to a lot of stuff, especially food. When you think about, if you go out and you eat, junk food all the time, and that's the energy that you are now about to convert into energy for your physical self. So if you're constantly eating junk food and everything, you're going to gain weight, and you're going to wake up in the morning, you're going to have, indigestion or heartburn or what have you, depending on the health that you are in, at the moment. But if you're not in good health, what's going to eventually happen? You're going to be converting bad energy, plain and simple. So you're going to wake up and you're not going to feel as refreshed as a person who ate a salad, all that, who ate light meat, who didn't, gorge on junk food or what have you, they're going to wake up with more cleaner energy. They're going to be more energized. You're going to wake up over time with bad energy. So this is negative energy you're absorbing into yourself, and there's a lot that go with that. So you have to look at that, understand that relationship of, good, clean energy versus bad energy, so on and so forth. But it's due to the symbiotic relationship that we have with the material as spiritual beings that we need each other to exist. So we don't have full access of our power, as I talk about, with the subconscious basically locking away, everything that we need to be, complete one. So because of this, and we're going to get into this a little bit later, it's going to make a lot more sense. Trust me. Because of this, we have this semi-relationship with the sun that's going to make a lot more sense as we go along. But it's because of this symbiotic relationship that we have with material that we need the sun to basically give us the energy to help us stay on the physical plane. And in turn, the material can survive, it can live, it can go on and complete its agenda. So there's an intelligence in all of this that you're going to begin to see as we go along. And it's amazing. So really, it's all part of the dualistic nature that makes up us. And it's one of the reasons why I say that material cannot be evil, because you have to understand the sun is God, plain and simple. It's God. If the sun is God, then it's capable of both good and evil, which we get from the sun, the creation of the material and the spiritual. It's dualistic in a sense biblically. If you want to look at Satan as the material, as we talk about, God is the spiritual, as we talk about. But you have to understand, they can't both be evil. They can't both be good. There's a dualistic nature. So material is a must. We must master material. That's one of the purposes of us being here, to master material, to understand it, to not succumb to it, to not be ruled by it, but to master it, plain and simple, to basically have complete control over the material, which would be you. If you can't master yourself, your flesh, then you can't master nothing. The spiritual will not be accessible to you because you are bound by the material. So there is a yin yang, of course, a balance, as I talk about, that must be had. And people are not really talking about this because they don't really understand. But the significance of it goes back to the sun. And we got to understand how it plays a role in every facet of what we do and so many things. Plain and simple. It's the reason why the sun is revered. The sun is basically worshipped and deified, of course, because it exists in so many different facets of our day-to-day, of our life, of our existence, and it's going to be responsible for whether or not we transform, whether we basically open the third eye, become one, and have balance. The sun is a huge part in all of that when you really understand. So the sun is basically the God over us, over the physical. Plain and simple. We have this God that reigns over the physical world, over us being in this materialistic realm. It is not the God of all. That would be consciousness itself. Consciousness would be the God of all. Plain and simple, because you have to look at the sun as us. The sun has a dualistic nature. The sun is material and energy, of course, like us. You have the sun being 75% hydrogen and 25% helium, and you have a small composition of various metals that makes up basically the mass of the sun. Small when you compare it, but compared to the earth, it's huge. So you have all these metals, material. You have the energy of the sun, the spiritual, what have you. So we are basically, you can put God in the material, which is why they anthropomorphize, or how they deify him and make him beings like Ra or what have you, because they looked at him as just like us, having a composition of energy and material. So this is why you can make God as a man, the sun as a man, or what have you, or God as Jesus, or so on and so forth, why they put him in that aspect as a being, because just like the sun, we are energy and material. So when we die, we have rebirth. When you understand the process, as I talk about, when we pass as this material, spiritual being, there is a going away of the material. And if you are not, completely one, balanced, you come back. You have rebirth into this physical realm. Now, when the sun goes supernova, the process starts over again. The sun recreates itself. This is the whole, metaphor with the phoenix rising from the ashes, what have you. You have a supernova and you have the sun basically reform itself. If the reaction from the supernova is unique, if it's done in a correct way, it can form planets, as I talked about. So this is something that, you have processes. And don't get me wrong, when you look at a supernova, when you look at suns itself, not all suns go through that process. There's so many things that have to take place with the sun. You could have a sun basically use all its nuclear fuel and to basically become a collapsed star, what have you. And you have dwarf stars, and you have suns that basically, burn out, you might as well say. And, you have suns that expand into giant stars, as they call them, gas giants, or red giants, and they become huge and they compress and they compact and come back out, and eventually they explode. So it's a lot. It's a process of life and death with the sun, just like it is with us, except for the sun lives longer than we do, if you look at it in that sense of being in one form for a long period of time, where we change forms many different times from incarnation to incarnation, if you are a being that keeps coming back here. So it's a lot to look at on a spiritual level, that you have to really go back and look at the ancients and how they talked about it to appreciate it. It's something that you can't really fathom today because it's not really clearly understood, but it's going to make a lot more sense in this video. So as I talked about before, we have consciousness creating energy. Consciousness being this all-knowing, powerful thing that we really don't truly understand when you think about it. But as we know, you have a thought occurs first, as I talk about, then energy. That energy allows the physical to move. Basically the same process as the sun basically being absorbed by the chlorophyll in the plants, and that energy is converted into food for the plant to be able to survive and move. We eat it, we're able to move, so on and so forth. So you have, stemming from consciousness, energy, movement, life itself. Now, the sun is responsible for all life on this planet, plain and simple. And the thing is this, our true self outside of this planet would be what? Consciousness and energy. With energy, coming from consciousness, as we know. So it will be we will be this conscious, energetic being. And you have to really understand that and think about that. Consciousness, and consciousness being an intelligence when you really get into it, which is why they use these words, and it's going to make sense in a second. So once consciousness and energy enters the body, it becomes subservient to the physical, plain and simple. It comes basically under the physical, because now this is the physical world that it's dealing with. Understanding that energy and consciousness is stronger than the physical, of course, because it's what's created, but it is basically bound by the material, by the body. And this is why. The thing is, you have the brain. The brain can be programmed, plain and simple. So the brain can be programmed in such a way that causes the consciousness to be out of the control of the subconscious.